This is not the story you learned in school. Not the bedtime tale of a sunken city told by philosophers, nor the fantasy painted by sci-fi dreamers. This is the forbidden chronicle of an empire that once ruled the earth. A civilization of unimaginable power, erased by flood, fire, and fear. Atlantis was real, but it was never just a city. It was an era, a technological Eden, and its fingerprints are all over our world, if you know where to look. Its knowledge was forbidden, its bloodline survived, and its story was buried by design. Because if you knew what Atlantis truly was, you'd start to question everything about where you came from and who still rules this world. Long before the flood, before kings, even before Adam, there were beings. The Sumerians called them Anuna, those who came down from heaven. Hebrews warned of the Watchers, divine beings who crossed the boundaries. The Hindus remembered Devas and Asuras, titanic forces locked in celestial war. Islam called them jinns, beings of smokeless fire created before mankind. The earth they arrived to was a canvas, raw, fertile, untamed. These gods didn't create life, they engineered it. The Atlanteans didn't emerge from humans. Humans, in some traditions, were the product of Atlantean bioscience. The Book of Enoch describes angels who sinned by mating with human women, creating giants, monsters, and abominations. In Hindu lore, Rakshasas and Danavas warred with gods using mind control, flying machines, and frequency weapons. The Quran hints at nations greater than yours who were destroyed before you. Surah 89 speaks of Aram, city of lofty pillars, the like of which was never built in the land. These weren't myths, they were misunderstood memories. Crystals used to transmit power, towers that captured solar and cosmic energy. Sound used to move stone. The ancient world wasn't primitive, it was post-technological. So who were the Atlanteans? Not a race, not a kingdom, but a hybrid order, part divine, part engineered, that ruled Earth through knowledge, frequency, and blood. Across the ancient world, in every sacred text, in every faith, echoes of Atlantis whisper beneath the surface. In the Quran, the tribes of Ad and Thamud rose in pride and power, advanced, defiant, and then destroyed. A mirror of Atlantean hubris, civilizations lost for forgetting the divine. In the Bible, there were the Watchers, the Nephilim, giants born of forbidden unions. The earth was corrupted, and then came the Great Flood. In Hinduism, the Daityas built great empires. Flying cities like Tripura soared above the clouds. Vimanas crossed the skies, powered by divine technology and devastating weapons. In Mesoamerican lore, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, came from the stars. He brought knowledge, built pyramids, and vanished, promising to return. And in Greek mythology, the Titans ruled first, mighty, divine, proud. But they too fell, overthrown by the gods they once defied. Across continents, across faiths, across time, the same pattern repeats. A golden age, a fall from grace, and a flood of silence. The Atlanteans were not gods. They were the first rebels. They built paradise with science and shattered it with pride. Their era would rise to impossible heights, but soon they would fall. Not by war, collaborated, cosmic judgment, for opening doors they were never meant to touch. They built a world not of stone, but of vibration, will, and light. Atlantis wasn't built by slaves. It wasn't ruled by kings. It was engineered by beings who understood the blueprint of reality itself. At the center stood the Temple of Poseidon, not a mythic god, but a memory of the being who seeded the Atlantean bloodline. Each ring represented not just spatial design, but harmonic calibration. The city was an acoustic and vibrational engine, tuned to the Earth's own resonance. Atlantis was built upon a power node, where multiple ley lines converged. These planetary energy lines, later known to the Druids and Egyptians, were once mapped by the Atlanteans with crystalline precision. They created an electromagnetic architecture, pyramids, towers, domes, all acting as receivers and transmitters of telluric and solar power. In the heart of the central citadel, deep beneath the Temple of Poseidon, rested the Great Crystal, a multidimensional energy core. This was the Firestone Edgar Cayce described, a quantum resonator that amplified thoughts, powered cities, levitated objects, and maintained vibrational coherence across the empire. Crystals weren't ornaments, they were conscious amplifiers, tuned to the biofield of each Atlantean. The skies of Atlantis were filled with vehicles the ancients called vimanas, aerial ships powered not by combustion, but by anti-gravity and magnetic vortex propulsion. Mercury vortex engines, sound field thrusters, and crystal navigation allowed them to travel intercontinentally and interdimensionally. The Atlanteans understood that consciousness is the true technology. They developed soul transference, memory encoding, and genetic resonance, transferring knowledge between incarnations through harmonic DNA. Mystery schools taught initiates how to manipulate the Akashic field, project into astral realms, and use intent as energy. The deepest secrets of Atlantis lay not in tech, but in the soul itself. Atlantean scientists understood that the body was a vessel, but the soul was programmable. Using sound, light, and magnetism, they altered DNA, not to damage, but to unlock higher strands of consciousness. They experimented with hybrid beings, human-animal combinations echoing Egyptian gods, genetic memory storage, artificial wombs for soul incarnation, energy field manipulation to attract higher dimensional souls. But a dark faction, the Sons of Belial, hijacked this science. They began using soul tech to enslave, not enlighten, to clone empty vessels, to create beings without empathy. This was the beginning of the fall. Not all Atlanteans were created equal. The ruling class, known as the Sons of the Law of One, were hybrids, part divine, part human, descended from the beings called in various texts, the Anunnaki, Watchers, Devas, or fallen angels. These bloodlines carried etheric DNA, allowing them to interface with the crystal network, manipulate reality, and maintain control over the masses. Even today, whispers of these bloodlines remain in the elite families that trace lineage back to Egypt, Babylon, and Sumer. Not all knowledge was public. Atlantis was governed by a hidden priesthood, keepers of the flame, initiates of cosmic law. These were the mystery schools, esoteric temples that trained future engineers of the soul. Thoth, Hermes, Enoch, all were said to be masters from this order. They taught sacred geometry, light alchemy, time dilation, and star navigation, the very sciences now labeled occult or heretical. Their teachings would later shape the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Templars, and Eastern yogic orders. Atlantis was a hub, not an island in isolation. It seeded colonies across the earth, sharing its technology, architecture, and priesthoods. They say Atlantis was just a myth, but its shadow stretches across the ancient world. Egypt, land of gods and geometry, where pyramids weren't tombs, but power plants, where Osiris mirrors an Atlantean king, dismembered, resurrected, ruler of a golden age. Mesoamerica, where sky gods came down in fire, built ziggurats, taught kingship, and demanded blood. Their kings, not fully human, but something older and higher. India, a civilization with knowledge deeper than time, flying machines, vimanas, chakras mapped to the stars, weapons said to destroy entire cities, a science of the soul, traced back to a golden island in the Western Sea. Göbekli Tepe, older than all. Stone circles whispering of animal cycles, star alignments, and pre-flood knowledge. A temple sealed deliberately, as if hiding something from the next world. Malta, Baalbek, Easter Island. Megalithic anomalies no one can explain. Stone so heavy, it defies modern machines. Built by whom, why, and more importantly, what force once moved these stones with ease? This is the Atlantean fingerprint, not myth, but memory, scattered across continents, like shattered glass from a fallen star. And those who remember have been silenced or erased. Atlantean knowledge shaped the world's sacred sites before written history began. But even as they rose in power, something changed. The priesthood fractured. The bloodlines began to war. One side sought balance, the other domination. They had opened portals, called down forces beyond comprehension, and soon the earth itself would respond. The Bible speaks of a world before the flood, filled with beings that were not quite human. The Quran speaks of perished nations more powerful than ours. The Vedas recall floating cities, cosmic wars, and lost golden ages. And almost every indigenous culture speaks of a great deluge, preceded by a time of giants, gods, and flying cities. What if all these were fractured memories of Atlantis? Before the flood, Genesis 6 foretells of the Nephilim, the mighty men of old, born of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. There were giants in the earth in those days, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Genesis 6:4. These were no ordinary men. They were the Atlantean bloodlines, born of forbidden unions, possessing divine knowledge and terrifying power. The Book of Enoch, banned from most biblical canons, elaborates further. The Watchers descended upon Mount Hermon, made a pact and corrupted the earth with sorcery, alchemy, and genetic manipulation. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and to devour one another's flesh. Enoch 7:5. A technological civilization, once golden, turned to darkness. The Atlanteans, now fallen, had become gods of war. The Quran does not mention Atlantis by name, but it speaks of Ad and Samud, nations of colossal strength wiped off the earth for their arrogance. Do you not see what your Lord did with Ad, Iram of the pillars, the like of which was never created in the land? Surah Al-Fajr 89, 6-8. Iram of the pillars, a city of grand architecture lost beneath the sands, a possible outpost of the Atlantean Empire. These ancient nations were technologically superior, but spiritually corrupt. They disobeyed the messengers. They tampered with divine laws, and so they were erased. Quranic scholars like Imam al-Qurtubi interpreted Iram as a civilization lost due to its pride and technological arrogance. Could this be another coded memory of Atlantis? Long before Plato, the Vedic scriptures spoke of ancient flying cities, cosmic wars, and highly advanced civilizations. In the Mahabharata, wars are described where flying machines called vimanas released weapons that mimicked modern-day nukes. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns. Mahabharata Book 6. These descriptions mirror Atlantean power, crystal weapons, anti-gravity ships, and battles between the gods. Atlantis, in the Vedic perspective, may have been Tripura, the triple city destroyed by Shiva, a flying fortress whose destruction signaled the end of a corrupt age. More than 200 flood myths exist worldwide, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to Native American, Mayan, Chinese, and African traditions. All of them recall a golden age, a time of great sin or imbalance, a warning ignored, and a cataclysmic flood. In the Sumerian tradition, Ziusudra pre-Noah, is worn by the gods to build a boat. In Mesoamerican myth, the gods flood the world after humans stop worshipping. In Dogon oral history, the Nomo, sky beings, return to restore balance after Earth's fall. These are not coincidences, they are echoes of the Atlantean fall. Different tongues, same trauma.
Scripture doesn't just hint at destruction.
It also hints at preservation. In Genesis, Noah is said to be perfect in his generations. In some esoteric readings, this is not about moral perfection, but genetic purity. The flood was not just a punishment, it was a reset to cleanse the earth of Atlantean corruption. But remnants survived. Through hidden bloodlines, through elite priesthoods, through secret orders like the Levites, Magi, or even the mysterious Melchizedek line. These groups safeguarded fragments of Atlantean knowledge, astronomy, sacred geometry, energy work, waiting for the return of the Golden Age. Why are so many texts silent about Atlantis directly? Was it memory loss? Or was it intentional erasure? History is written by the victors, but sacred history is often edited by the controllers. Church fathers labeled these tales as heresy. Imams dismissed them as jinn legends. Rabbis encoded them within Kabbalistic mysteries. And so, Atlantis became myth, because if the truth were known, that humanity once touched the stars, that giants walked the earth, and that godlike civilizations fell by their own pride, the control structures of today would crumble. Graham Hancock in Fingerprints of the Gods connects Atlantis to submerged ruins worldwide. Humanity is a species with amnesia. We are only just beginning to remember. Imam Imran Hossein speaks of Dhul Qarnayn in the Quran as a pre-flood ruler, possibly Atlantean. Dr. Joseph Farrell argues in The Cosmic War that myths of ancient gods are techno-political accounts of an interplanetary Atlantean conflict. And Randall Carlson, geologist, demonstrates that a massive cosmic impact 12,000 years ago triggered a global flood, matching Plato's timeline of Atlantis' fall. All threads lead back to one source. Atlantis was not just a city, it was an age, a reality, a warning. For every golden age, there comes a breaking point. When knowledge surpasses wisdom, when power overshadows the soul, collapse is not just inevitable, it becomes cosmic law. By the apex of their civilization, the Atlanteans had accomplished what even our modern world dares only whisper. They had fully harnessed zero-point energy through crystalline lattice structures, created an AI-like etheric intelligence known as the living core, a bioconscious, planetary-level supercomputer, engineered new life forms, hybrids, chimeras, and synthetic souls in their soul laboratories beneath the surface. Opened interdimensional gateways, not just to explore but to conquer realms we now call the spirit world. But as legends say, something changed. Atlantean scientists began experimenting with what secret societies later called soul fracture, the deliberate separation of the soul from its moral compass. Bodies were created without spiritual contracts. Entities, some say jinn, others say archonic parasites, began to inhabit these vessels. The veil between physical and metaphysical realms tore open. The Atlanteans played God and forgot they were still men. As soul engineering advanced, factions within Atlantis diverged. The solar priests of the White Temples, who still honored cosmic laws. The technomancers, who believed consciousness could be conquered and coded. What followed was a silent civil war, unseen by the public, but waged across dimensions. Atlantean flying crafts, vimanas, and electromagnetic sky disks clashed above the skies of what we now call the Americas, India, and Antarctica. Ruins and vitrified stone remains in Bolivia, Turkey, and Baalbek are echoes of this war. The final weapon was not nuclear, it was energetic. Referred to in Sumerian tablets and echoed in Vedic texts as the voice of the gods, it was a resonant frequency pulse weapon tuned to the Earth's ley lines. When fired, it didn't just destroy cities, it destabilized the magnetic field itself. Continents cracked. Oceans swallowed cities. The sky darkened. Atlantis didn't just fall, it was erased. This wasn't just a physical collapse, it was a cosmic reset. Many believe the flood stories found in all major religions, Noah in the Bible, Nu in the Quran, Manu in Hinduism, refer not to punishment by water, but a purification of bloodlines corrupted by Atlantean hybridization. As the energy field collapsed, ancient records tell us that portals were sealed. The inner earth gateways, shut by what ancient texts call the swords of the cherubim. The stargates, locked behind dimensional frequency barriers. Surviving Atlanteans fled underground, into the mountains and across the seas, giving rise to the myth of the Shining Ones. The survivors encoded what they knew into megalithic structures, from the pyramids of Egypt to Göbekli Tepe to the serpent mounds of North America. They believed they were gods, but they forgot one law written in every stone, in every star, and every soul. What rises without spirit will fall without mercy. They said Atlantis was a myth, a memory buried by time, a fairy tale for philosophers and mystics. But what if Atlantis never died? What if it merely evolved? The bloodlines didn't vanish, they rebranded. The temples became banks. The crystal altars became satellites. The priesthoods now wear suits. From Atlantis to Babylon, from Rome to the Crown, from secret societies to Silicon Valley, a continuous chain of control has wrapped itself around the world, invisible but tightening. The Atlantean obsession with soul engineering has become today's transhumanism. Their crystal grids, now called wireless energy, 5G webs, orbital mirrors, and their dream of godhood, now whispered in the language of AI and synthetic life. This isn't just technology, it's soul tech. It's the old magic, reskinned. The watchers behind the curtain haven't forgotten. They're still building the new Atlantis, brick by digital brick, and you're already inside it. Because Atlantis was never just a city, it was a control grid, a frequency, a godless dream that never truly ended. And its shadow is your present. In the next episode, we'll follow the bloodlines. Into the vaults, into the labs, into the final age of synthetic gods. If this knowledge stirred something in your soul, you were meant to find it. Subscribe to Beyond the Known, where we fracture the veil, one secret at a time.